Hello guys, welcome to another video of DevOps. In this video, we are going to discuss about an important concept in DevOps that is called pipeline as code. We will be discussing everything about pipeline as code in detail, how we can use this, and why this is needed, along with examples and differences with the traditional pipelines which we can create in DevOps. So let's begin the video. This is the agenda, and we'll be discussing all of this. Introduction to pipeline as code, why pipeline as code, key concepts in this, and what are the popular tools which we can use in here, and what are the benefits of using pipeline as code. Okay, we'll also discuss some of the examples. We'll see how you can create the pipelines with code, and we'll finally discuss the best practices as well. Okay, so let me start by giving a quick introduction of pipeline as code. What is the definition? This is nothing but referring the practice of defining CI/CD pipelines using code. So if you are creating the classic pipelines, you can create the pipelines with code as well. That is called pipeline as code. Okay, you can just read the definition here. Pipeline as code refers to the practice of defining CI/CD pipelines using code. What is the core idea? Automate build, test, deployment process via version controlled files. That means you can keep your pipeline in the version control or in some repository, and you can create one pipeline using that YAML file or DSL file, whatever you want, or whatever you can create for your pipeline as code. Okay, based on that pipeline, you can define different set of tasks to build, test on, or deploy your application, and keep all those files or all those configuration file in the git repository. Okay, this is integral to continuous integration and continuous deployment. You can achieve this continuous integration and continuous deployment using the pipeline as code as well. Now let's discuss why pipeline as code is needed. So this provides us so many benefits. The first one is consistency. If you are using or creating your pipelines with pipeline as code, you can achieve consistency. This ensures reproducible builds, tests, and deployments, because you can create all the build task, test related task, and deployment related tasks using code, or YAML code you can say, or DSL code, whatever you want to create, and keep that code in the repository so that no one will be able to change it whenever they want, so that your pipeline will be consistent and reliable. The second one is version control. You can store your pipeline in the code repository. So whenever someone has to modify it or modify your pipeline, they will have to again go through that branching strategy. They will have to create the feature branch. They will have to make the changes in your feature branch, and they will have to create the pull request. So your pipeline will basically go through all the review, and uh, after review, if that is complete or if everything is fine, reviewer can go ahead and merge the pull request so that your feature branch code will be merged to the main branch. So this way your pipeline will also be reviewed, so that nobody can go ahead and directly merge your code or modify the pipeline, uh, somewhat like classic pipelines. Everything has to go through review. You can achieve scalability. You can easily replicate across project. You can use the pipeline modules which you might have created in different projects as well. You can use the same pipeline in even in different projects if you are creating the YAML pipelines. Okay, this is the advantage we get of using pipeline as code. This you can achieve collaboration using this. This enables teams to modify pipeline definitions because you will have some repository. They can of course check out that repository and they can modify and submit their change if that is related to pipeline or something like that. Okay, the last one is automation. Pipelines triggered by code changes. You can add the triggers, you can achieve or you can enable continuous integration and continuous deployment so that you can achieve the automation. You can enable triggers in your pipeline so that someone making the change in your code, this pipeline will be auto triggered and this will automatically build or deploy your code. Okay, now let's compare the pipeline as code versus traditional classic pipelines which we create in any of the CI/CD tools. We'll be comparing each of the features with pipeline as code and traditional classic pipeline. So these are some of the differences you can see. For the definition, we define pipeline as code pipelines in YAML or DSL, but in traditional classic pipelines, we configure through GUI. Okay. For version control, we can use this and store our pipeline in the source control. But in case of traditional classic pipelines, we cannot because these are configured in GUI and you just get one GUI interface to change your classic pipelines. Okay. For team collaboration, this is you can collaborate with teams. Multiple teams will be able to edit the pipelines or make changes in the pipelines at one time. But in case of classic pipelines, they cannot. One person can make the change at once. If two-person are making the change, they won't be able to save the pipeline. In case of reusability, this pipeline as code is modular and reusable. Like just I told you in my previous slide, you can create separate modules, separate templates in your pipeline, and you can call the same templates multiple times so that this way you can reuse the same templates multiple times or you can create multiple time or you can create multiple pipelines if you are using this pipeline as code approach. And in case of classic pipelines, of course, this is harder to reuse because you cannot reuse the same pipelines for multiple purposes. In case of environment, this is consistent across environment and this is prone to inconsistencies because in case of this pipeline as code, you will be using the same modules which you might have used in different environments. So suppose you are using one module in dev environment, you will be using the same modules in production environment as well. Okay, so whatever you are doing the changes in template, the changes will be applicable to across the environment. But in case of classic pipelines, that won't. This is easily scalable, but classic pipelines is manual configurable. Okay, you'll have to modify the things manually. This is portable across projects, but traditional classic pipelines you cannot port it to different projects. But in case of pipeline as code, you can even use the pipelines which you have in different project to somewhere else. Okay, auditing this pipeline as code changes are auditable because you will have to go through with pull request. You will have to create the pull request and a reviewer will review the pull request and approve it. But in case of classic pipelines, this is very difficult to track changes. Who has made something? Anybody can go ahead and modify the pipelines if they have the required permission. So this is very difficult to track the changes. In case of flexibility, this is highly flexible and this is limited flexible. So based on this comparison, we can say pipeline as code is more suitable to DevOps approach, or this is the way forward to go, you can say. Most of the company now generally we use pipeline as code feature because this is easy, not easier you can say, but this is better way of achieving your or creating your pipelines. Let's see some of the examples. So this is the example of creating Azure pipelines with YAML. Generally, we use YAML to create the Azure pipeline or to achieve pipeline as code with YAML in Azure. Okay. If you can see this, I already have made videos about this YAML pipelines in Azure in my previous videos. You can go and watch it. So for this, we have added the triggers here. So this will trigger the pipeline whenever some changes are merged to the main branch. Okay, this will automatically trigger. The agent pool will be using this. This will select the Microsoft hosted agent and image will be Ubuntu latest. We have two stages here. You can see one is to build. This will build the code, and another stage is to deploy. This will deploy the code. So this is the sample YAML pipeline to create the build and to deploy that as well. Okay, and this code you can store in repository, and based on this YAML file you can create your pipeline. Okay, this is just the simple pipeline. I have explained multiple complex pipelines as well in my previous videos. You can go and watch them. This is another example of pipeline as code in Jenkins with pipeline DSL. You can see we have defined the pipeline here, and agent we have selected any, and we have added multiple stages here. Like this is the stages. The first stage is the build one. This will build, this stage will test, and finally this stage will deploy. Here inside stage we have added the steps. You can add multiple steps as well, so that those steps will be those steps will be running whenever you run this pipeline. So this way you can just configure or store this file somewhere in your repository, and in your pipeline you can just refer this pipeline and your pipeline will be created successfully. No need to go into GUI and create all the configuration and everything manually in the CI/CD tool. Okay, let's now discuss the best practices for pipeline as code. What are the best practices we should follow when we are using the pipeline as code feature? For version control pipelines, make sure you are using or storing pipelines file in code repository, so that you can refer that, or you can refer that code repository directly and create your pipelines using that. And also you can create the branch policies and make sure or your developers or DevOps engineers are following this strategy of creating the feature branch and merging, creating the pull request, getting that reviewed, and completing that pull request. Okay, so that your pipeline will be consistent and reliable. The second one is modular pipelines. It's best to break large pipelines into smaller modules, so that you can call those modules directly from your pipeline, and this will be easier to debug as well. If some issue happened in your pipeline, you'll be able to identify which module is breaking and where you need to fix. And even multiple or peoples, if they need to use those modules in their project, they can refer these modules and use for their purpose as well. For security, use environment variables for sensitive info. So suppose you are using some secrets or certificate, you can use the key vaults to store the information, or you can create the variable groups and hide the sensitive secrets so that that won't be visible inside your pipeline. Okay, make sure you are testing your pipeline before using this in production. Test pipelines in staging before production, because you cannot directly create your pipeline and directly deploy in production, because there might be some bugs in your pipeline and this will break your production. So make sure you are going through the development life cycle approach. First you are doing it in test, then staging, and then production. Okay, so we discussed about pipeline as code in this video. We discussed how pipeline as code streamlines CI/CD, how this ensures consistency and collaboration. Okay, and also this if you are using pipeline as code, nobody will be able to directly go and modify your pipeline. They will have to go through the pull request. They will have to create the feature branch and they will have to get the pull request reviewed. Then only they can merge the changes in your pipeline, so that this will be consistent and reliable. Okay, it accelerates software delivery with reliable automation, because you are creating or you are keeping all your pipeline in the code base, so that this is reliable, and you can make sure that our pipeline will not fail. Hence you can achieve the faster software delivery and reliable automation. Okay, so that's it from this video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe my channel. If you have any feedback or suggestions or questions, please let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.